Welcome, welcome, welcome. Dr. Lisa Holland here, welcoming you to episode 14 of Owning Her Health. And today is the show for you if you are a woman or a man that loves a woman in the age bracket of moving from maybe motherhood into the matriarch role, that perimenopause, it's starting through that 40s, maybe even into your 30s, getting some of those symptoms, but really where we can actually celebrate. And we have Michelle Lyons on today, and she's perfect for celebrating because her company, her website, celebratemewliberty.com, is really demonstrating that the word itself, Mewliberty, she picked, and she explains it's because it's derived from the Latin mu libertas, which is the state of womanhood, the meaning of the state of womanhood. And really, she's about that. She's about celebrating through her blogs, her courses all over the world, teaching health providers how to work with women, how to be healthy as women, embracing their femininity, taking charge of their body to live a happy, vibrant, healthy life. Like me, she's an integrative physio. I know she has experience with, not only being a chartered physio, but Pilates and integrative health, and she's an herbalist, and she brings in herbal medicine. We talk a lot about that as the traditional medicine, the women's circles, things that were our traditional medicine, and owning that. So make sure that you get yourself a little notebook, and if you're listening in the car, you listen to this again, taking down your notes, and making sure you follow her over on her blog and her website. This episode is also, for my listeners, sponsored by Audible.com. Audible.com is a wonderful way to get all this wisdom on the run while you're doing things with the kids, while you're running in the gym. I know I'm getting feedback that people are listening to these podcasts while they're doing lots of other things, which is wonderful. I want you to find the time to listen. But they have over 180,000 audiobooks, and my listeners are given a special discount of not only 30-day free trial, but a free download. And so you can get that at audibletrial.com/owningherhealth. It'll be on the Libsyn page, podcast notes, along with Michelle's contact. And so get yourself ready for another wonderful episode of Owning Her Health right now.
Welcome to this episode of Owning Her Health with your host, Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. Join Lisa as she starts the conversation on what it really takes to become a healthy, wealthy, and whole CEO of your life. Listen in to real talk by real lady leaders in all walks of life as they open up on personal health stories, wealth, career, and feminine abundant living. Learn how to grow by owning your body, expanding your mind, and aligning your soul with the purpose only you can pursue in this world. Happiness begins with owning her health right now.
Welcome to another episode of Owning Her Health. I'm Dr. Lisa Holland here, and I am so privileged and honored to have a colleague and internet friend of mine, Michelle Lyons, fellow physio, integrative physio, such as myself. She practices in Ireland and around the world, really teaching fellow professionals, workshops, and getting them really into some of the things she's doing with women's health and integrative care, and her Women on Fire that she runs annually with Jenny Burrell in Burrell. I don't want to pronounce that correctly.
Burrell, correct. Excellent.
In the UK, and just recently we had a great event here in America, in New York, with Women in Women's Health with Jessica Drummond as well. So thank you very much, and welcome, Michelle. How are you today?
I'm very well, Lisa. Thanks for having me. It's always lovely to chat with you. It was so nice to meet you in real life in December. I think we've been communicating online for a long time. We have a very similar outlook. It's lovely to be here, and I get to talk about women's health, which is always a good time for me.
Yes, definitely. And particularly, one of the things that I think is important in women's health that I think now we're finally seeing is that it's the complex nature. And I know that one of the reasons why I went into more of an integrative practice was because I saw that, obviously, being a woman, multifaceted, multi-layers, feeling unheard in mainstream medicine. And my venture was to go, back in the middle 90s, late 90s, you know, I kind of found my way to yoga, and I just sort of naturally pulled that in because it was a mind body kind of soul searching thing I was doing, and it was so helpful therapeutically. What brought you more towards more of an integrative path with your work?
So I would say, you know, looking at what we're seeing now in terms of neuroscience and the advances that we're making in terms of the research to back up what we know in integrative healthcare, where we're starting to focus more on the person rather than the pathology.
Right.
I would say that's always kind of been my outlook. I was using things like herbs and nutrition and breath work before it was kind of cool to be doing these things, you know, so it was a little bit under the radar. Maybe my more traditional physio colleagues thought I was a little bit woo-woo. You know, I think the evidence now has kind of come full circle to back up the approaches that we have doing. So for me, it's really been an interesting journey. I mean, back in the late 90s, in the early 2000s, I've done some coursework at the University of Arizona, their program with integrative medicine with Tirone Low Dog. I've been using herbs kind of traditionally, you know, Jessica Drummond and I joke about it. I just have a very kind of backyard peasant herbalism style, you know, I have my nettle tea going here, you know, as we're chatting today, because I think it comes down to, I was teaching at the International Herbal Symposium back, I think it was in 2003. And I was talking to Susan Weed, who's a really well-known herbalist from upstate New York. And she actually asked me the question that you just did, you know, why are you doing this? Why are you talking about herbs and nutrition? Aren't you a physiotherapist or a physical therapist? And I said, because I think each by themselves, it's not enough. I think we really need to look at what's going on movement-wise, nutrition-wise, mental health-wise. If we're going to address the whole woman in our practice, you can't just say as a physio, do 3 reps of this exercise twice a day and, you know, I'll see you next week. You got to look at what's going on, you know, and it's almost become a little bit hackneyed, hasn't it? You know, kind of, but the body and the mind. And for me, bringing in the breath work, the yoga, getting women cooking for themselves again and understanding the medicinal properties of certain foods.
Yes.
You know, and really plugging back into their own bodies and into their own lives again. A lot of women that I work with in my practice, I do specialize broadly in women's health, but I see a lot of women with pelvic pain or sexual health dysfunction, you know, pregnancy and postpartum issues, menopausal health, and lots of women are just very dissociated from themselves. And for me, getting them back into the kitchen can be a really safe way to get them back into prioritizing self-care again. So, you know, I know you can see me as we're chatting here. If you look at the bookshelves behind me here, there's probably as many cookbooks and herb books as there are anatomy books and physio books. And, you know, most women, and apparently I say this quite a bit because somebody made me a little meme and I use it in a lot of my talks, but most women know more about their phones than they do about their own body. So I think just a really empowering service that we can provide as healthcare practitioners is to, yes, of course, stay within the scope of our practice, but move beyond maybe the traditional definitions, but get women back in touch with who they are, what their goals are, what's going on with their bodies, just even the correct anatomical terms for their body parts again. And using mirrors, using the power of touch, using the power of movement, just really get them back into their own bodies again. So they move from being passive recipients of things being done to them, and really move more towards being active participants in their own healthcare. And in fact, the captains of the ships of their own healthcare as well, because their healthcare providers are working for them and with them, hopefully, as well. But at the end of the day, they have to be the ones steering the ship, because I think with knowledge and power also comes responsibility. So we have to give the clients that we work with ownership of their own health again, and work towards their definitions and their goals, not necessarily ours.
Right.
It'd be hard for some of us to let go of.
Yes, you have that soap note. You know, you have that soap note where you were taught in school. What are our goals, and you know, how are our benchmarks for our productivity and our, you know, things that we've determined way before that person's ever walked into the office.
Exactly. And as well as that, you know, particularly because, you know, I lived and worked in the US for years, that insurance-driven model where we're trying to meet an insurance company's set of benchmarks and goals for the woman sitting in front of us again, and have they made a statistically important improvement in their functional outcome scores? But looking at the woman in front of us, how is she doing? What's going on with her? And I think that for me was one of the big reasons that I did end up shifting my career trajectory into more what I'm doing now and away from that traditional 9-to-5 hospital-based model.
Right. That's so beautiful. And I hear a couple of key things there, Michelle, is that empowerment and how important that is in anyone with their health. But I think with women, I mean, first of all, they didn't even do the research really. They're still having trouble with doing any research on women because of that kooky little variability in our
those pesky hormones.
Those pesky hormones that just ruin all the data significance. I often say, well, we need to come up with a better model. We need to come up with a better research model that you can accommodate for that, rather than just disconnect with 50% of the population.
Well, a lot of there's a great book that was written a number of years ago about women and heart disease by Nika Goldberg, who's a cardiologist in New York. And the title of the book really struck me. It's Women Are Not Small Men. Because traditionally in the medical research fields, the studies were done, particularly the animal-based studies were done on male mice, because not on female mice, because female mice, I think, have a 12-day ovulatory cycle. So that was just messing up all the results. But essentially what was happening for a long time with pharmaceuticals was they would take the standard dose calculated for a man and then just bring it down by 30% or so. And there's the female equivalent dose. And it doesn't work like that. We have different anatomy, we have different physiology, we have different hormones. It just doesn't cross over like that. So I think it's been great over the past couple of years in terms of global access to information, which can sometimes be overwhelming for some of the women that we work with. So to be able to act as a clearinghouse for what's relevant, what's irrelevant, and how to personalize it again for that person sitting in front of you. So again, we're very much focused on the person, not the pathology that they've been referred to or that they're referring themselves to see us because of.
Right. And another thing I thought was really interesting, and it just, goes to show that ultimately we're human beings. We're going to go back to our foundations, was your mention of food and that whole, herbalist kind of mentality. One of my mentors is Maya Tiwari, who was actually brought Ayurveda and Ayurvedic training to the United States, a woman. So, you don't really hear about her doing her work. I almost think that's, a lot of times that's our energetic role as women. We're really catalysts. We really kind of traditionally, the hearth, the home, these roles, I think to some extent with feminism getting a little bit in the way of us even honoring those roles as something that is a strong power, because people didn't realize the medicine of that. And I almost feel like, you and myself and others trying to bring that back, bring that feminine power back
connection
into the whole picture. Because like you said, being the CEO of your life is really where health, wealth, everything comes. And and you're an example of it. Your business now, you're able to bring that philosophy, make a new role for yourself. And I've just seen you really blossom, over the past, I'd say 3 years. I started with Jessica's program, I think 2014.
Sure.
And, you and Jenny and everybody sort of taking that same idea of like, let's be out there and loud and proud and
absolutely
and different. So
let's do it in a more of a female-centric way, and I think that's, again, you and I think are on the same path with this, and Jenny and Jess and other of our colleagues. But for a long time, healthcare and the world of health and fitness were following a very male model, and even the world of yoga. You look at I would say if you look at yoga over, say, the past 100 years, what we're really looking at, modern yoga, particularly in the West and how it's been interpreted, it had a very male-driven model. But most of the practitioners of yoga are women.
Right.
So, you have to take all of that into account as well. And I think that's where game changers, and I'd be very proud to include myself in your company under that title. But it's to start speaking up and saying, you know what, no, we don't have to do it this way. We can do it a different way. So, for instance, when Jenny and I worked together in the UK, we try to have a very female sound. We're unapologetic about it as well, for a start. We have the flowers in the room. We've got some nice smells going on. We do our lunch. We do nice things for lunch, nice things to eat and drink, and there's enough time for a tea break and to mingle and to network, because you know what, that's where some of the most important conversations happen as well.
Community.
It's to provide that, absolutely. And that's what women do. We have that tend and befriend hormonal structure going on, with our oxytocin. And I think we have to step away from the fear of being judged when we do speak up and speak out. And, if you're worried about what other people are thinking about you and what you're saying, if they are making comments about that, you know what, then they're not paying attention to their own stuff. It's more a reflection on them. So know your truth. Don't be afraid to say it. And don't be afraid to acknowledge the fact that you are a woman, and you're dealing with women's health. And then it has to, it's not going to be that traditional male model that we're working with. So don't worry about it. Just step up, claim your place, stand in your own space.
Right. And so much of that is voice,
Absolutely.
your upbringing and all of this, and which makes that the complexity of, even as a health provider, I find, half of my work is getting them to just be honest.
Yes.
What's going on.
And not be scared.
And not be scared. And also with that whole idea of vulnerability, that actually being a strength to be able, so many people look like, oh, they're strong because they don't cry or they don't seem to get bothered by things. And we have to really look at, are they actually just closed off from their emotions? I mean, emotional intelligence is something we don't really take as much pride in, but it's a natural attribute women have that allows them with their health.
Yeah. And I think just to step into that a little bit and, not be afraid of being dismissed as emotional, or if we're speaking up, being dismissed as shrill, which you would never hear leveled at a man. I'm sorry. And this is not me man bashing at all, but it's about accepting our differences and celebrating them. And I'm very fond of a lot of men. I'm married to a really nice one.
Me too. I hear you. And that's the other thing. It's like, it's not man bashing at all to say that you want to have women centric models to admire, or, that maternal, that matriarchy. Finding that valuable doesn't mean that you don't find a patriarchy valuable. You're just saying that it shouldn't be the only way. And I love that.
And I think I really see that because I have my feet, I stand in a couple of different worlds. So I see that really in the world of herbal medicine, particularly in the US. You have some really strong female voices. You have some really excellent male herbal teachers out there, people like, David Hoffman, David Winston. But if you look at who's leading the renaissance in herbal medicine in the US, you have Rosemary Gladstar, who is one of the brightest, shiniest people I have ever met. You have Susan Weed, who's a fierce advocate. You have people like Deb Soul, Amanda Crawford. There are giants of women who are leading the way in reclaiming that. Because if you look at what, the UN say that, 3/4 of the world still use herbal medicine as their primary care medicine. So I'm Irish, obviously, and we're the largest per capita consumers of tea in the world. But that's our answer for everything. No matter what crisis is going on, we'll put the kettle on, we'll have a cup of tea, and we'll talk about it. But if you look at the power of having a cup of nettle tea or a cup of chamomile tea, even Peter Rabbit had a cup of chamomile tea before he was upset when he had an upset tummy. And I think just being able to go out, and there's a certain power in whether you're going out foraging in the woods or you're going foraging in your grocery store, for medicinal foods and vegetables. If you're looking, for some fennel seeds for an upset tummy, or even some prune juice for constipation, things like that. I think there's a tremendous sense of power there. Not to say that herbal medicines are completely safe and we should, because if a plant is powerful enough to have an effect, it has to be respected. But I think there's great power in knowing, the healing power of foods and herbs and vegetables, as well as the healing power of just sitting still with yourself and with your body and allowing your body what it needs. If it is rest, are we just pushing ourselves too hard? And I think that only comes from the ability to pay attention to ourselves and creating that safe space to say, you know what, I know there's a list of things to be done, but what do I really need? What do I really need right now? And even something as simple as making a menu choice when you go out to eat. I remember I was reading an interview with Nigella Lawson a couple of years ago, and she was being interviewed by one of the Sunday papers, and I think the options were, there was something like super healthy, like a superfood salad, or something a bit more indulgent. I think it was, there was some sort of creamy pasta dish, going on. And it was about the time she had put out her clean eating cookbook. And the reporter asked her, so what are you going to have? Expecting her to go for the superfood and be very virtuous. And if you've ever seen Nigella, she tends not to be terribly virtuous. But she said, if I'm forced with a difficult decision on a menu like this, I sit down and I close my eyes and I think, okay, so what's it going to feel like eating the salad, or what's it going to feel like eating the pasta, and which makes my body happy? And it's going to be different choices for different times. But if you haven't got that space to listen to yourself, you haven't got the space to move towards health and to sustain health as well, because I don't know that it's something that you can just dip in and out of as well. So it's creating that little bit of bandwidth in our lives as well, and then feeding ourselves with knowledge and with the space to take care of ourselves, to put ourselves on the list as well, which is probably something that as healthcare providers, we as women healthcare providers especially,
struggle with.
We do struggle with it, as a healthcare provider and a wife and a mother. It's like the triple crown of great excuses not to have yourself on the list.
You know too much in every realm, so you know exactly what you're doing to yourself. Yeah. You're abusing yourself.
You just put your fingers in your ears and you go, la, la, la.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll get back to me later.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm hearing a really strong level of trust with you, Michelle. Is that something that your inner guide, like, let's just say, was there a guru gal, was there a young gal that was trusting and courageous like that? Or is that something that came upon by experiences and things? Because, it, like you said, the art of not caring what people sort of say or expecting that you're going to have that opposition, I think definitely with women is something that it almost has to come within.
I think, what, I've tried to be brave in the choices that I've made. I've had a really good support network in terms of friends and family, and, and at the end of the day, maybe a lack of too much caring about what other people think, to be honest. I love trying new things. I love travel and trying new foods. And I think it's curiosity and what if, and just not being afraid to try different things and to admit when you're wrong. And and it's okay to change your mind.
That's right. That's an evolution. I mean,
yes.
When you learn something, you should maybe change your mind. I see that a lot, and it makes people sick. Makes a lot of women sick is saying, I think also too, I think one of the realms of being healthy is aligning with your purpose, or at least knowing it. But I don't think purpose is like one thing you get forever. I mean, it evolves, especially as a mother. I think that's one of our training grounds to understand. As a woman, if we would embrace that, our cycles of life, not only our every 30-day cycle, and not try to manipulate it so much, but actually look at it as our cycle of life, it would be naturally that wisdom. And I almost think with menopause, I know you work a lot with menopause, I think that is almost, I see where that conflict energetically of having not satisfied that, or in some way spoken to that in the past, getting to that, I call it the matriarch, the movement from the mothering to the matriarch role, whether or not you mothered a career or mothered a child or an idea, a nonprofit organization. It almost feels like that needs to be settled a little bit before you move on comfortably with that matriarch role. And I see women suffer physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically so much moving into that next wisdom. I mean, it used to be, you know, the wisdom of our grandmothers and really honored role, but it's not as much. Do you find that similarly, or?
I do. Well, I think, you know, we know that the average age of onset in menopause is 51. So that means we're in perimenopause essentially for about a decade before, so 41. What I've also found, both with the women that I work with and personally, is that when you turn 40, it's like somebody flips a switch and you start to not care so much what other people think. And that can be an issue around conflict. And I see a lot of women, you know, they're in their 40s and maybe their children are a little bit older, and they're starting to realize, you know, I'm halfway through. Is this all there is? And starting to make some different choices. And I think that's where a lot of that conflict can come around. You know, change can be tumultuous. You know, that was the old euphemism, wasn't it, for the menopause? The change.
Right. The
And
change. It was so bad to change.
I know. So I think it can really be a fantastic bridge for women to take charge of their lives, to take charge of their health, certainly, because menopause is one of those things that, you know, especially for those women who've maybe had PMS every month, you know, that's a little kind of just little shot across the bow, just to let you know, if you don't start addressing this now, menopause is going to be interesting for you. And then menopause comes along and you're faced with a choice, you know, am I going to just, am I going to stay stuck, or am I going to change? And, you know, I see a lot of women blossom in their 40s. Yes. Because they step up and they start putting themselves on the list. And you have to, because I think menopause demands it of you. It's change, you know, change, evolve or die, you know. And for some women, unfortunately, literally, we know that for post-menopausal women, the risk of heart disease skyrockets, you know. And all the women that I talk to when I'm doing, you know, talks to what I call normal women who are not healthcare professionals, you know, I ask them what's the biggest killer of women, and they will almost always say breast cancer.
Right.
You know, and so I say, well, okay, so 1 in 8 women will get breast cancer, 1 in 36 women will die from breast cancer, but 1 in 2 women will die of a cardiac event. And heart disease in women, it's harder to detect, it's harder to treat. We don't respond as well to the standard medical interventions. But your heart, you know, I think it's quite interesting to see that the metaphysical connections between what's going on spiritually and what's going on physically, because we're moving away from that as a woo-woo concept into now this whole field of psychoneuroimmunology. Right. Every thought that you have is going to produce neuropeptides, and there are receptors throughout the body for these neuropeptides, and they're going to influence everything from your immune health to your digestive function and your cardiac health. So I think just acknowledging that there are real life or death situations to start thinking about when we're in our 40s. We're not going to live forever. It can really bring into sharp focus what's important and what's not in a woman's life. And I view it as a privilege to be there to help them navigate through that, and to help the healthcare providers that help them as well, and to destigmatize some of the issues that can come up in menopause, particularly around pelvic health, which is my first love. You know, because there can be such shame around bladder dysfunction and bowel dysfunction and sexual health. And the more normative we can make it for these conversations to be held in safe places, and to provide concrete solutions, not just abstract, oh yes, do your Kegels, do your pelvic floor exercises. No, here's exactly what you need to do. It's not one size fits all. So this sort of customized, tailored approach, again, to the woman sitting in front of us, for me is really important. And I love that part of my work, but I love teaching professionals how to start incorporating that into their professional and hopefully some of their personal lives as well.
Yes, because you know, you got to heal the healers. It's the quadruple aim
now. You
know, you can't have a bunch of sick people helping sick people. It just it doesn't work. It comes and trickles down. So
and there's such
people, you know, it just trickles down.
For sure. And there's such a high rate of burnout in healthcare professionals. We know that, and stress and illness, that I think we have to walk it as well. We can't just tell people what to do, but I think we have to start modeling good behavior. And that can be really challenging as well, because I think a lot of us are used to do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
But I think it gives you a whole appreciation. So for example, with say somebody who's coming to see me because of bladder dysfunction, maybe they've got some urgency issues. and I might say, well, go fill out a bladder diary, you know, for a couple of days so we can see exactly what's going on. If you haven't ever filled out a bladder diary, they're a pain in the neck to do.
Yeah.
Like, they demand a lot of adherence.
Do I have a paper? Especially with urgency, you're like, oh, damn it.
Absolutely. So if somebody actually manages to do a good bladder diary for 3 days, I'm like, thank you. That's fantastic. But I think, you know, what we as, you know, because I know we're coming from the background of being pelvic health focused physical therapists, what I think is one of our strengths as physical therapists is, I think, well, a couple of different things. I think we tend to be quite good at the whole empathy versus sympathy aspect of what we do, but we know how to ask the questions and we're licensed to touch as well. And I think that really brings the whole bio and the psycho and the social elements in together. But the other strength I think that we have as a profession is that when we're doing our professional courses, we practice on each other. You know, right. And our medical colleagues, you know, our doctors and our nurses and our mental health colleagues, when we tell them this, they kind of look at us going, what? You do this to each other? You don't have models? And I think that's actually a strength for us, because we can then turn to a patient and say, you know what, I've had this done. I know what it feels like. This is a safe place. I am not going to hurt you. And I'm going to talk you through. I'm going to show you on the anatomy models that I have. And I think we are very privileged as a profession in that regard, that we can bring those different strengths to work with our patients. I think, you know, I'm obviously completely unobjective, but I think that physiotherapy globally, but particularly in the Western medical model, is very, very underrated. I think there's a lot that could be done to solve the current health crises on both sides of the Atlantic. If physical therapy was given a little bit more of a voice. So I'm quite encouraged to see the APTA particularly stepping up in terms of the opioid abuse situation, and really getting physical therapy on the map, because I think we're really good at talking to each other. We're probably not as good at talking to the normal people, the people who need us in our communities. So I think that's going to be a great direction for us as a profession over the next coming years.
Sounds good. So Michelle, where is the best place for some of these women and men, hopefully, listening to this podcast for empowering themselves and finding and connecting with you? What are you working on right now, and where can they find you?
So I would say the best thing to do is come on over to my website and sign up for the newsletter. There's some free resources on there. The website is celebratemuliebrity.com. So that's MUL. Okay, you can have that in the show notes. Yeah. Muliebrity is a great old English word that I found, and it means the art and state of being a woman.
Love that.
So I think that's something that we have to celebrate. We don't just want to look at illness and pathology. We want to celebrate being women, and to celebrate being healthy women, more importantly. So all the information about courses and where I'll be, and hopefully some useful resources will be there on the website.
Yeah, and then your newsletter is great, and
thank you.
You know, the way that you put it and share some things, and you know, like you said, for professionals that are looking for that more integrative approach, but not as stuffy. I mean, just that conversation and being able to relate and understand that you can be scientifically relevant without necessarily being you know, so linear. That curvy, you know, I always call it the Kirby Hustle or the curvy flow, or, you know, being able to use that.
Well, I think the thing is, as women, we have a very rich corpus callosum between the two hemispheres of our brain. Men have a much thinner connection. So we can go from that right hemisphere, left hemisphere, back and forth, and take the scenic route sometimes to make a point. We will eventually make a point. And I think it's great to see the evidence and the research actually backing up what we've known clinically for a long time working in women's health. So I think it's a golden time to be working in women's health in terms of the resources and the knowledge and the evidence that's available to us. So now we have to get out there and spread the word.
Right, and stop breaking our own hearts, right?
Yes.
Every 80, I just saw a billboard by a hospital, every 80 seconds. Every 80 seconds, a woman is succumbing to a cardiac event. That's crazy. Crazy. So, you know, we talked a lot about, but it's the heart and that connection, you know, interestingly enough, and I'll finish off with yoga wise, the heart, the fourth chakra and the second chakra, they always like, they balance out the ego, and that, what we talked about here really kind of connects to that trust, that sex, money, power, second chakra, and that heart and passion and frustration really too, because those are, two sides of the same coin there.
And then speaking your truth.
Right. Speaking your truth and then making that identity from it. So I thank you so much, Michelle, for the work that you're doing. I celebrate you, and love that I have a connection with you, because you inspire me.
Thank you.
To keep
ditto, by the way.
So thanks so much. And anyone who is anyone in women's health knows Michelle Lyons. So go and check out her website, check the show notes, or contact me, and I'll get you in touch with her. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Lisa. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening into this episode of Owning Her Health with Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. To learn more about her personal and professional development service, visit her online at drlisahollandpt.com.